Mutiny in Florida. That's what some people are calling it, and even that description doesn't capture the horror of what is really going on right under our noses. There have been a whopping 840,000 layoffs, and that's not all. Inflation is skyrocketing, and RV homelessness? It's exploding like never before. We know, this sounds dramatic, like some sort of a dark revolution, and like a downright exaggeration. Well, it is. But here's the truth hiding inside that exaggeration. Florida's truly bleeding, and it's far worse than you think. Let us paint a truly horrifying 743,000 people lost jobs or got discharged through mid-2025. That's 14.8% higher than the year before. As if that isn't scary enough, over 30,000 people are experiencing homelessness, a 19% jump from 2022. Third highest in the entire nation.
We are now hearing from people in Lake County who say one of the county's biggest employers shutting its doors is going to hurt them.
Told you, Mutiny doesn't really describe this mess. What it really is a ruthless storm. Costs are rising faster than you can say Mar-a-Lago. Jobs are disappearing faster than Harry Houdini and housing. Basically, Florida is in a situation where working people can't afford it anymore. Already the situation is in literal hell, but somehow it still gets really, really worse. Because thousands of seniors, people who worked their whole lives, now live in RVs and vans. They don't have a choice, as Florida's paradise became too expensive to survive. When you see what's really happening, you'll understand why the Sunshine State is casting shadows on the people who built it. When paradise stops being affordable, Florida used to mean something. Maybe it still does because people are actively moving there. People see it as the ultimate retirement destination. There is no state income tax, living seemed affordable, and the weather was just perfect. Warm weather year-round? What's not to love? This was the promise that brought millions of people to build lives here. That promise is 6 feet and beyond. 905,000 low-income renters in Florida are what experts call severely cost-burdened. That means they're spending over 40% of their income just on housing, not 40% on everything. 40% on rent alone, before food, utilities, transportation, healthcare, or anything else humans need. Zoom out further. Over 2.4 million low-income households across Florida face housing cost burdens. That's not a small problem. That's a crisis consuming nearly half the state's population living paycheck to paycheck. And if you think buying a home fixes this, well, think again and think hard. Median home prices hover around $385,000 to $411,000. Monthly payments approach $3,000 in many areas when you factor in mortgages, insurance, property taxes. Who makes enough to afford that? Not teachers, not nurses, and certainly not retail workers. Overall, the people who keep Florida functioning don't make that kind of money. Cities like Miami, Tampa, and Orlando now rank among the most unaffordable places globally, not just in America, globally. Some economists label them impossibly unaffordable. This is not an opinion, but the cold, hard reality. So how did paradise become unaffordable? 4 forces converged. 4 horsemen of Florida's economic apocalypse, and they're crushing everyone caught between them. Rapid population growth. Florida's population exploded. Migration from expensive states accelerated. Remote workers discovered they could keep high salaries while moving to cheaper states, except their arrival made Florida expensive. Someone from California sells their house for $900,000 and buys a new one in Florida for $400,000. The person thinks they got a great deal. They just outbid every local family who couldn't compete with out-of-state cash after all. But this became a pattern, and that pattern repeated hundreds of thousands of times. Each newcomer with wealth pricing out people already living here, the people who served food, who taught school, who provided health care, priced out by migration they didn't cause and couldn't control. Then, just as they are dealing with that, another factor was making Florida unaffordable, and that's soaring property insurance. As if people living in Florida weren't in a terrible situation already, insurance became a weapon. Property insurance premiums jumped 60% since 2019 in some areas. Average premium increases hit 42% in 2024 alone. Some seniors saw increases of 200 to 300%. Insurance bills climbing from $150 monthly to $300, $400, $500. For people on fixed incomes, that's catastrophic. Social Security doesn't suddenly triple because insurance companies decided Florida's too risky. Seniors making $1,800 monthly now face insurance costing $500. That's over 27% of total income just for insurance, before rent, food, and their medication. And approximately 12% of Florida homeowners got dropped by insurance companies entirely as of April 2024. Not because they filed claims, because insurers decided Florida's hurricane risk made them unprofitable. They dropped coverage and left homeowners unable to get mortgages without insurance, trapped in homes they can't insure or sell. Were the insurance companies right to do that? Have they lost their humanity due to their pursuit of profit? How intense are Florida's hurricane risks? Hurricane risks. The truth is, every part of Florida's coastline has been affected by at least one hurricane since 1851. And the entire state can experience impacts from wind, rain, tornadoes, and flooding, even from distant storms. According to 2025 studies from Colorado State University and others, Florida has a 90 to 92% chance of at least one named tropical storm impacting the state, and 62 to 65% chance of at least one hurricane. Compared to other states, Florida tops the list every year in forecasts. So, yeah, Florida has it bad when it comes to hurricanes, and the situation somehow has become more terrible. 2.8 million seniors live in Florida's evacuation zones. Hurricane Ian alone displaced 400,000 seniors in 2024. Their homes were destroyed or damaged, and with insurance not covering costs, there's no chance of a rebuild. Then, FEMA assistance began to run out, and seniors who survived the storm faced homelessness months later. And here's what people miss. Hurricanes kill during the storm. They also kill after. Power goes out for weeks. Seniors on oxygen machines die. Diabetics lose refrigerated insulin. People with heart conditions can't handle extreme heat without air conditioning. The storm passes. The dying continues, and with the next factor behind the Florida affordability crisis. It doesn't look like there is an end in sight. Severe shortage of affordable rentals. The rental crisis is much worse than you think. Florida needs approximately 188,000 more affordable units just for low-income households. The shortage is massive, and it keeps getting worse. For every 100 low-income households in Florida, only 26 affordable units exist. 26 out of 100. 74% of low-income households are competing for housing that doesn't exist. They're not failing to find apartments. The apartments literally aren't there. The crazy part is, the ability of these earners to earn become absolutely smashed because of this next factor. The layoff factor. Let's talk about job losses. 743,000 layoffs and discharges through mid-2025. That averages 107,000 monthly. Some are voluntary quits. Many aren't. South Florida alone saw over 5,500 layoffs in certain reports, doubling during the first half of 2025. Hospitality got hammered. Ritz-Carlton laid off 425 temporary workers. SLS South Beach cut 200. Royal Palm eliminated over 100 positions. Hotels that used to employ hundreds slashing staff because tourism softened slightly. Lewis Tree, a contractor, laid off workers after Florida Power and Light ended their contract. Hundreds of workers suddenly unemployed because a utility company changed contractors. No warning, no alternatives. Just termination notices. Federal job cuts hit Florida hard too. The state employs approximately 160,000 federal workers. That's the same as Florida's entire telecom and data storage sectors combined. When DOGE cuts federal positions, Florida citizens lose those jobs. 24 NOAA weather scientists got laid off in late February during hurricane season. The people who forecast storms that threaten millions. Gone, because federal restructuring decided they were expendable. So you've got housing costs rising, insurance premiums exploding, hurricane damage displacing hundreds of thousands, affordable rentals not existing, and jobs disappearing across every sector. That's not one crisis. That's 5 simultaneous crises feeding each other. And the people caught in the middle? They're drowning, and nothing they can do seems to be able to stop this. What can they do when their paycheck seems powerless against rent? And this is just one impact of the affordability problem. Rental crisis. When a paycheck means nothing. Let's talk about what renting actually costs in Florida now. Orlando metro area. Average rent hit $1,553 in April 2025. That's a 38.5% increase since 2017. Within 8 years, rent is almost 40% more expensive. Did wages increase 40%? Take a guess. In the Deltona and Daytona area, average rent is $1,418. That market cost $994 back in 2017. Same story. Massive increases that wages didn't match. Miami's even worse. Tampa's crushing people. Rental stock increased 51% since 2021 across Florida. You'd think more apartments mean lower prices, supply and demand. Economics 101, except prices rose faster than supply increased. More apartments were built, but most were priced for people making six figures, nothing for the working class. Someone making $40,000 annually takes home maybe $2,700 after taxes. Rent for a basic one-bedroom costs about $1,500. That's over half their income gone immediately. Financial experts say housing should cost 30% maximum. People are spending 50-60% just on rent. The math doesn't work. Can't work. Physically impossible to survive long-term. One unexpected expense destroys everything. Car repair, medical bill, anything. When half your income goes to rent, there's no cushion. Savings? What's that? You do not have any margin for error. You're walking a tightrope every month hoping nothing goes wrong. This is not a good way to live because eventually something always goes wrong. Okay, so renting's impossible. What is next then? Buy a house? This brings us to the next impact, Florida's affordability problem. Homeownership barriers. The locked door. Buying a house requires qualifying for mortgages when median home prices run $385,000 to $411,000. Insurance costs alone push monthly payments to around $3,000. Then add property taxes, maintenance, and utilities. You need to gross probably $70,000 annually minimum to handle those payments. Florida's median household income? Around $58,000. You're $12,000 short before you start. First-time buyers are completely locked out. Can't save down payments when rent consumes half your income. Can't qualify for mortgages when lenders want proof you earn 3 times the monthly payment. Can't compete with cash buyers from out of state. The door to home ownership slammed shut for an entire generation. And even if you manage buying somehow, insurance becomes the next trap. Some seniors bought homes decades ago when prices were reasonable, owned them outright, no mortgage. Then insurance jumped from $2,000 annually to $6,000, from $167 monthly to $500, on fixed incomes, with no way to absorb that increase. Can't sell because the market softened in some areas. Can't afford to stay because insurance is bleeding them dry, trapped. And that's how people who own homes free and clear still end up homeless. Insurance made shelter unaffordable even when mortgages were paid off. Then this brings us to this next part. Florida is in growing troubles, no doubt, but for these next 3 regions, they are already in hell. Miami-Dade region. Miami's unemployment sits at 2.4% as of June, down from 2.6% the prior year. So jobs exist, people are working. But high rents make employment meaningless. You have a job but still can't afford housing. That's the Miami reality. South Florida's WARN notices doubled half of 2025, companies announcing layoffs at twice the rate. Even with low unemployment, instability is growing. Let's head on the next region of doom, Tampa Bay area. Tampa faced dramatic housing cost increases. The insurance crisis is hitting particularly hard there. Coastal location means hurricane risk. Hurricane risk means insurance companies fleeing. Companies that remain charge astronomical premiums. Working people getting priced out of a city they've lived in for decades. Now we go to the metro. Orlando metro. Orange, Osceola, Seminole counties. That $1,553 average rent we mentioned, and 664 homeless seniors over 55 counted in January, growing since 2023. Orlando's not supposed to be this expensive. It's not Miami. It's not a coastal paradise. It's inland Florida. And still, people can't afford to live there. So we've talked about regional effects. Let's talk about the broader effects. Broader effects. The domino fall. Now we are zooming out to statewide impacts. 30,756 people experiencing homelessness in 2024. That 19% jump from 2022 represents thousands of newly homeless people. First-time homelessness. People who were stable 2 years ago. Families with children saw a 21.6% increase between 2022 and 2023. That's approximately 1,400 more families without housing in 1 year. Families and parents with kids living in cars, motels, in shelters when beds are available, or on streets when they're not. Florida school data shows over 35,000 students experienced homelessness during 2024 to 2025 school year. They are going to school from cars, motels, and shelters. From couches at relatives' places when relatives allow it. 35,000 children whose education is happening while they don't have stable homes. Eviction filings rose 25% year over year. More families getting kicked out faster than services can help them. Each eviction pushes people closer to vehicles, closer to streets, closer to crisis they may never escape. The broader effect is society fragmenting. Working people can't afford to live near their jobs. Seniors forced out of communities they've been in for decades. Families living in cars while both parents work full-time. The social fabric is tearing, and everyone pretends it's normal. Imagine that. The last resort is now the new normal. RV living. SER, the last resort. So what happens when someone loses housing? When rent becomes impossible? When buying is fantasy? They find vehicles, RVs, vans, cars, whatever has 4 wheels and can be slept in becomes home. Vehicle dwelling is the growing portion of unsheltered homelessness across Florida, scattered across industrial areas where enforcement is lighter, parking lots where businesses tolerate overnight parking, beaches where tourism infrastructure provides bathrooms. South Florida neighborhoods report dozens of rental RVs appearing. Not recreational vehicles for weekend trips. Living quarters for families with nowhere else to go. Richmond Heights specifically noted clusters of rental RVs becoming permanent fixtures. People renting old RVs monthly because it's cheaper than apartments. Brevard County's point-in-time count showed a 4.8% drop in overall homelessness in 2025. Officials celebrated progress. Advocates said that's nonsense. The drop came from sweeps pushing RV dwellers out of sight. Not from housing people. From making them invisible. Doesn't reduce homelessness. Just move it somewhere harder to count. And here's the cruel irony. Living in an RV costs money. You need somewhere to park. RV parks charge $600 to $1,000 monthly. You need propane for cooking and heating. Need gas if you have to move constantly. Need dump station fees for waste. Need special insurance. The costs add up to almost as much as cheap apartments. Except cheap apartments don't exist anymore. So people choose RVs because they offer things apartments don't anymore. No credit check, no proof of income 3 times the rent, no first month, last month, security deposit. Just buy or rent an RV and find somewhere to park. It's not better. It's just possible. And possible beats impossible when those are your only options. Still grinds you down anyway. Burns through savings, destroys health, makes stability impossible while you're desperately trying to find it. For those who are younger, they can still make some sense out of their harsh reality. What about the seniors? How do they survive? So, let's explore, then in this next part of the video, fixed incomes versus rising bills, the math that doesn't work. Let's talk about Florida's seniors. 4.9 million people over 65. That's 21.7% of Florida's population, highest percentage in the nation. Florida is where people came to retire, to enjoy golden years, to live comfortably on Social Security and pensions. But that's not possible anymore. Central Florida counted 664 homeless seniors 55 and older in January, growing since 2023. National estimates suggest senior homelessness could triple over the next 15 years, and Florida is the #1 on the leaderboard of that disaster. Here's why. Fixed income averages around $1,800 monthly for many retirees. Social Security programs max out at $2,829 monthly for most people. Let's use $1,800 as an example. That's what you get. Every month, same amount. Doesn't increase with inflation. Doesn't adjust for rent hikes. Fixed. Now apply that fixed income to Florida's costs. Rent's $1,500 minimum. Already 3% of income. Add utilities, food, medication, transportation, phone. The basics of existence. You're spending $2,000 monthly on an $1,800 income. $200 short. Every single month. Can't make up the difference. Can't work more hours because you're 70. Can't ask for raises when your income is Social Security. This has no solution, and it forces impossible choices. Pay rent or buy medication. Keep housing or eat. Every decision is survival math with no correct answer. One senior interviewed said it plainly. No way to make up the difference between what you've been paying and what's being asked now. That's the senior experience. Costs rising faster than you can adapt. With no tools to close the gap, and the situation keeps deteriorating, just as the next factor describes. The deteriorating safety net. Programs that can't keep up. Okay, so government programs exist to help seniors, right? Safety net? There is a net, all right, but none of them make any senior feel safe. Mobile home parks, traditionally affordable senior housing, are getting bought by institutional investors. Big companies purchasing entire parks, then jacking up land rent. Seniors who own their mobile homes but rent the land beneath them face steep increases they can't afford. Rent goes from $400 to $800 monthly, doubling. On fixed incomes, what's the response supposed to be? Community care for the elderly programs exist, but wait times run 30 to 90 days. So, if you need help now, good luck. That 90 days is a declaration of how the government can't help you. So, what if the government can't help anyone? At least there is a program, right? Well, those programs have asset restrictions. Own your car? Might not qualify. Have $7,000 in savings for emergencies? Disqualified. Programs designed to help the poor punish anyone with any resources. SNAP, food assistance, has limits that don't match reality. Maximum benefits don't cover food costs when inflation has pushed groceries up 20+% since 2021. You get approved for $200 monthly, food costs $400. Congratulations on your partial solution to a complete problem. Because of their limitations, the programs can't scale. Demand is exploding. Funding isn't. Waitlists grow. Eligibility becomes stricter. People who desperately need help get turned away because they're $200 over some arbitrary asset limit, or because the program ran out of funding for the year, or because paperwork took too long to process. And the alternative of living in an RV for seniors? Well, pay attention to this next story. Life in a parking lot. Sue Bennett's story. Sue Bennett's story shows both the crisis and the possibility of escape. She came from Maine and lived in Florida for 20 years. Life circumstances changed. Found herself without housing, no family nearby. No furniture, no support system, just herself and the need to survive. Eventually she moved into an RV in Oak Hill, not by choice, by necessity. That RV became home because nothing else was available. She lived there, existed there, waited there. Then something rare happened. She got approved for a senior unit at Green Lawn Manor through New Smyrna Beach Housing Authority. An actual apartment, walls, a door that locks, stability. She moved in with a blow-up mattress. That's what she had. Furnished the place slowly through free stores and thrift shops, built a life from donated furniture and secondhand items. Not ideal, but housed, safe, stable. Sue's story matters because it shows the razor edge people live on. She was one approval away from permanent RV living, one housing authority slot away from dying in a parking lot, and she was lucky. Most people don't get that approval, don't get that call. They stay in RVs, in cars, in parking lots, until something kills them. What's life actually like in those parking lots? Before Sue got housed? What do seniors face living in vehicles? The hidden dangers, what nobody talks about. Florida summer heat. Temperatures hitting the mid-90s. Humidity making it feel like 110. An RV is a metal box with minimal insulation. Without air conditioning running constantly, interior temperatures exceed 130 degrees. People cook alive in vehicles designed for weekend camping, not permanent residence. Black mold grows in damp RVs. Respiratory problems, infections, conditions that require medical care people can't afford. Generator fires break out. Propane heaters malfunction. Carbon monoxide builds up in closed spaces. People go to sleep and don't wake up, found days later because nobody checked on them. Isolation breeds crisis. Overdoses happen without anyone nearby to respond. Violence erupts in RV clusters where people are desperate and stressed. Medical emergencies go unaddressed because help is far away. Someone has a heart attack in their RV, dies before anyone realizes. That's the reality of parking lot living. Then there's the legal persecution. House Bill 1365, passed in 2024, bans public camping across Florida. Makes it illegal to sleep outside on public property. Imposes fines. Threatens jail time. For people with nowhere else to exist. The bill doesn't provide housing alternatives, doesn't create shelter beds, doesn't solve homelessness, just makes it illegal. So people living in RVs because they lost housing now face criminal penalties for surviving. Fines they can't pay, jail time that makes getting housed even harder. The cruelty is policy. Youth aging out of foster care face similar traps. Turn 18. System releases them. No housing, no support, end up in vehicles. Then Child Protective Services threatens to take their own kids because the RV is unsafe. Slumlords rent decrepit rigs to desperate families, knowing they have no alternatives. Families live in conditions that could kill them because everywhere else is worse or unavailable. Domestic violence survivors fleeing abuse find themselves choosing between danger at home and danger in vehicles. Escape violence only to face systemic violence of abandonment. Their safety becomes vehicle dwelling. Their refuge becomes a metal box in a parking lot where different dangers wait. This is what Florida does to seniors who built the state, to families who work full-time. To young people, the system failed. Criminalizes their existence, hides them from view, pretends they don't exist unless they're breaking some ordinance, then punishes them for survival. So, should Florida just roll over and give up, or should they do something? But what could the state even do if it wanted to? Solutions. What Florida could do, if it wanted to. Start with what works elsewhere. Housing first initiatives prove mostly effective everywhere they're implemented. Give people housing without preconditions. Then address other issues from a stable base. Decades of research back this. Communities that adopted it reduced chronic homelessness by 80%. Not pilot programs, not experiments. Proven results. You house people first. Mental health improves. Addiction treatment works better. Employment becomes possible. Everything gets easier when someone has an address. Vouchers help. Public housing expansion helps. Land banks that acquire property for affordable development help. These aren't theoretical. They're tested solutions other places use successfully. Florida could implement them tomorrow if they wanted to. The Florida Council on Homelessness released a 2025 report pushing permanent supportive housing for high-need populations. Integrate Medicaid. Provide wraparound services. The goal? Make homelessness rare, brief, one-time episodes by 2027. The plan includes 518 new affordable units. 518 units. For a state with over 30,000 people experiencing homelessness, that's 1.7% of need. It's acknowledging the problem exists, not solving it. But it's a start. Maybe. Local organizations are trying. Emergency RV delivers mold-free rigs to disaster survivors and people escaping domestic violence. Continuums of care coordinate across 28 regions for rapid rehousing. These are band-aids, necessary band-aids, but this requires surgery. Governor DeSantis boosted shelter funding. Critics correctly point out that shelters without addressing root causes just warehouses people temporarily, doesn't provide path to permanent housing, doesn't fix wage stagnation, doesn't cap rents, doesn't make insurance affordable. Just offers temporary beds, while systemic problems continue crushing people. Community efforts offer glimpses of possibility. RV villages where residents organize, rig solar panels for power, plant gardens for food, create mutual aid networks. These informal solutions need legalization, need support, need recognition that people will house themselves if given space and resources. But Florida's response is usually enforcement, not empowerment. Churches allow parking. Some businesses don't call cops on overnight RVs. Individuals donate to mutual aid funds. Share information about which areas tolerate vehicle dwelling. Bridge people to wait lists that might, eventually, after months or years, provide actual housing. This is how the problem gets managed on the ground. Not through the government, through people helping people because institutions won't. The solutions exist. We know what works. Housing first. Affordable construction. Rent stabilization. Insurance regulation. Wage increases matching cost of living. Protections for seniors on fixed incomes. Expansion of safety net programs. Rapid rehousing for people losing housing. Prevention before crisis. All of it is possible. All of it requires determination. And Florida chose enforcement over housing, chose property values over people, chose tourism revenue over resident welfare. Every session they could fix this. Every budget they could prioritize housing. They choose not to. Florida's not experiencing mutiny. It's experiencing collapse. The slow-motion disaster of costs rising faster than incomes, of insurance becoming unaffordable, of hurricanes displacing hundreds of thousands, of jobs disappearing while bills keep coming, of seniors who built Florida being pushed into parking lots to die in metal boxes. The 840,000 layoff number was an exaggeration, but 743,000 real numbers is bad enough. The inflation skyrocket claim was hyperbole. The actual insurance and rent increases are devastating regardless. The RV homelessness explosion isn't overstated, it's undercounted, hidden, swept away where comfortable people don't have to see it. This is solvable, not easy, but possible. Other places prove it daily. Florida has resources, has wealth, has capacity, lacks determination to prioritize housing people over protecting property values, lacks courage to regulate insurance or cap rents or build affordable housing at scale. So seniors will keep living in RVs, families will keep getting evicted, students will keep going to school from cars, workers will keep being unable to afford to live where they work. It destroys the people who built it. If this made you angry, good, it should. These are your neighbors, your parents, your kids' teachers, real people crushed by systems designed to extract profit instead of providing shelter. Before you go, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. This crisis is accelerating across America, and the next updates will show which states are following Florida's path.